So before, like 10 days or 7 days before Biden took office in 2021, you were writing prior then, not about illegal immigration because he hadn't opened the doors, right? It hadn't, and then suddenly the next column you did, and ever since then, it's been about illegal immigration. And I am so interested in your work on sanctuary cities, and we've got people being killed, another mom. I mean, all this stuff is happening, but I'm really trying to focus right now more of my attention on what is called, I'd say euphemistically, legal immigration, this system. And so if you can take your mind back to those days where you were talking about that, and OPT is to me one of the most important topics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
Well, I think this is so important. Now, I'm so glad you want to focus on that because, look, I mean, in just 100 days, illegal immigration is down 95% or something like that, and deportations are way up, and one refugee or one legal immigration program has been shut down. But we really need to start paying attention to the ways people come here that are not, running across the board.
Exactly, because
the numbers are huge.
The numbers are huge with the illegals, but we all have that down. Deport them all or nearly all. Okay, something like that. We know illegal immigration has to come to an end, and we need to reverse what has happened the last 4 years. So we got that. It's going to be hard. We're going to have to fight. Trump is going to have to fight. Everybody's going to have to fight to actually get beyond this judicial tyranny. But now let's work on what is some people consider to be almost an intentionally complicated system that allows for breathtaking, I would say, lawlessness, fraud, corruption across the board.
Generous manipulation, fraud.
Everything. It's
want to be generous.
It's like a plethora or a myriad of illegalities and un-American activities.
Right. This gaslighting, you name it.
Oh,
it goes
gaslighting,
on.
big one, gaslighting. By the way, just to give the most breathtaking gaslighting is that we cannot survive as a nation and be competitive with China and defeat China unless we bring in Indian immigrants primarily, and by the way, Chinese immigrants. That is something I'm seeing online, especially from Indians across the board. They say we can't keep our lights on, that our school systems will fail, our higher education, all of it. That's the kind of gaslighting that's out there. And people that don't know the facts, and this is why, of course, everyone knows who watches this show, I do the worst introductions. I just start talking and then
fine.
Okay. So I will say, this is Jessica Vaughan, and she's with the Center for Immigration Studies. We've had many of her colleagues on, and this is the first time for her, and she is here instead of at CNN because this is going to be more fun. And so we are already on the right page. I will say also that I rarely begin with this series that I'm doing on the Elizabeth Farah Show is called America First Immigration. And we've all got to get that pinned or placed in our mind and keep it there, that immigration is not for the benefit of foreign workers or foreign economies. Immigration should only, every single item on the list of what is America First Immigration should be that America First Immigration advances American labor interests. And if it goes contrary to that, then we've got some talking to do. There should be some other bullet points. So that was kind of my introduction. Let's get back to business. I read an article today that so upset me, and it was the Wall Street Journal. As a matter of fact, I have it here. And the title is Big Oil is Offshoring Its Prized Engineering Jobs to India. I will say this. We're going to go over this story a bit, but I'm going to tell you how committed I am to this issue. I literally sometimes can't sleep. I'm not showing off. That doesn't say anything for my mental health. But I literally went to my mother who lives with me. She's 90 years old. And I went to her and I told her this story. And I said, I think I can barely speak. I'm breaking up my throat like I'm going to start to cry because I do not know where the end will ever come. When 8,000 men and women that went to school to become engineers and other related fields, highly technical fields, to go into the gas and oil industry are going to be laid off in the next year by one company alone. And at the same time, in this article, they say they are hiring, they're going to be offshoring their employment to India. You got something to say about that?
This is a classic case of how guest worker programs work, and in particular, one guest worker program known as the H-1B, which is supposed to be for the best and the brightest temporary workers, that allows American companies access to global talent, the best global talent that we want to attract to our shores, as if and it operates on a number of different myths. And the first myth is that there are not enough qualified Americans to do these jobs. The second myth is that employers have to show that they couldn't find American workers before they're allowed to bring in guest workers. And the third is that these are well-paid, highly skilled individuals who are coming in.
Oh, let's go through it.
All are myths. And this scenario of American professionals losing their jobs and being replaced by guest workers has happened over and over again for the last 20 years by blue ribbon American companies like Walt Disney, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Deloitte and Touche, if that's what they're called anymore, Price Waterhouse, and even state agencies. And this should shock everyone. Even the U.S. Labor Department hires guest workers often to do tech work, back office work, but even jobs in accounting, in teaching, in nursing. All of these jobs are vulnerable. None of these are jobs Americans won't or can't do. The reason the employers are doing it is because these workers will work for less. When we hear people from India saying that we're not going to be able to compete globally without their talent, that's nothing but ethnic chauvinism or national chauvinism on their part. We have well-educated, highly skilled workers who many employers say actually happen to be more creative, more innovative, and just a lot harder working even than some of these guest workers. The reason the guest workers get hired is because they're cheap. The way the system works is staffing companies will bring in they monopolize the limited supply of these guest worker visas by flooding the zone with all of their applications for workers. And then they turn around and hire people from not just India, sometimes from China, Russia, Malaysia, other places, and bring them in with the promise that if they stay long enough, they'll get the employer to sponsor them for a green card. So the guest worker is willing to work for less because they think there's a green card at the end of the rainbow. Our research has shown that these are not the best and the brightest necessarily, or even the highest paid workers in the market, that the employers and the staffing companies will categorize them as trainees and entry-level workers so that they can pay them the lowest wage tier allowable under the federal regulations. And that's how they displace American workers, and it's usually a staffing company that brings them in. Sometimes the American employers will be the direct employer, but they can save so much money on their payrolls by replacing their American workers with these staffing company workers that they have almost cornered the market on some back office functions, computer programming, tech support, and other jobs like that. And it's not that there's a shortage, it's that they'll work for less. If there were genuinely a shortage of workers in these fields, we would see wages rising. In fact, we see stagnant and falling wages, and we see these stories about American workers being just replaced, kicked to the curb by employers who want to increase their profit margins. So that's the story, and that's how it works. And problem with the green card promise is that Congress doesn't allow enough green cards annually for employment-based immigration to actually be able to accommodate all of these people coming in as temporary workers who, in their own mind, are going to be permanent workers. So then they end up staying here forever, indentured to these firms because they can't leave their job, because if they do, they won't be able to get their green card. So they stay here sometimes as long as 10 years in this kind of extended temporary worker status. And then they go and lobby Congress and say, oh, this is so unfair. We're being exploited by our employers. We're not being paid.
The backlog.
Right. So that's how we get the political pressure and all these faux studies that say, oh, Americans can't do this work.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because I really need, and we're doing our reporter, Amanda Louise Bartolota, who's just come on with us, she has done thousands of hours of work on this. She's right here in D.C. right now meeting with the Department of Justice, because she has, I think, 30 suits with them on unfair labor practices. And we're going to be releasing the names of those 30 companies on Friday. Cannot wait for that. So be watching WorldNetDaily for those headlines, because she's got about 250 stories that she's going to be releasing over the next, as fast as she can. That's how deep her research is. Anyway, the thing that really bothers me is that first myth. All three myths bother me, but let's go with the first one. I want to tease that out a little bit because I've got to nail it down so that it is definitive, because they are inserting, and by the way, the Indians online are doing this so much that it's heartbreaking, because I think what it does is demoralize Americans. When and by the way, when congressmen and with big tech bros and everybody else keeps repeating to American moms and dads, students who have dreams that are being shattered and demoralized, that we don't have what it takes. We don't have what it takes. And Vivek Ramaswamy's comment that all we care about is, proms and Netflix and our devices. I think that is having a deleterious effect on the psyche of the American, of all Americans. Give us some assurances. Do you have numbers? How do you prove that we have enough people that will do this work?
The easiest way, if you believe in a somewhat free market, is by watching the wages. If there was a time when we actually had a shortage of tech workers, and that was around the millennium, the turn of the century, the late 90s going into 2000, because everyone was worried about this Y2K problem. And there was a lot of new technology that was becoming available to organizations.
There hadn't been before. It was right. Brand new. It was Jurassic Age for us, right?
Yeah. Yes. And I know this because my husband worked in technology at the time. He was changing jobs. He could do it every 6 months if he wanted to. He didn't do it quite that frequently. And his salary went up every time. And this was happening over and over again all over the country. Tech workers were in high demand and they could command very large salaries. Employers were actually had to compete for the best workers, which is the best thing for any profession.
According to J.D. Vance, in that speech that he gave at some conference, I think it was in D.C., but it was about the dynamism of American industry. And he was saying that with American companies some time ago, decade, 2-3 decades ago, say 2 decades or more, went from a model of improving the bottom line through innovation and just doing things better, to cutting the bottom line by hiring low-skilled or low-wage labor. So labor is always a huge proportion of your budget or your expenses in a company. And so instead of saying, let's come out with this new innovative way to do this or improve products that we already have, because we've got this great team of brilliant engineers and tech people and all that, they said, oh, we can cut $20 million off of, our payroll expense by hiring in India.
Yes. Well, what happened yes. Were you finished? Yes. So what happened was there was a labor shortage, and companies did want more workers in this field. So they persuaded Congress to, on a temporary basis, about double the number of temporary skilled workers coming in. But the other thing, the way this works is that young kids graduating from high school saw all this demand in the tech sector, and they too wanted to be a part of it. So they started enrolling in college degree programs in technology and STEM, basically. And so eventually, when the world didn't end on Y2K and the market kind of righted itself, there was a surplus of workers. And so, and that situation has never really righted itself, in part because the inflow of guest workers in this sector and this surge of green cards given away in this sector meant that there aren't enough jobs for everyone in this field. And we find now the situation where something like, I believe it's about 40% of American STEM graduates are not able to find jobs in STEM.
Let me drill down on that for a moment, because in this article, my emotional response, I don't have it in front of me, but I said, this is proof of how this is all happening. The oil industry, energy industry says we've got to start, and it's industry-wide apparently. And of course, when one company does it in a second, then the third and fourth have to, et cetera, to remain competitive. They decide to start letting go of their American engineers and geologists. And what does that tell? And then they're offshoring to India primarily, because you're not going to offshore probably to communist China for this kind of thing. I don't know. But they're saying India. And that, yeah, exactly. That always, makes me confused why we want all of our technology in China. But it says Chevron is going to cut as roughly 8,000 jobs, or 20% of its global workforce, by the end of next year. But at the same time, they are they aim to add about 600 jobs by the end of this year in India. Most, or nearly half of their 40,000 employees are in the United States. So it's mostly going to be from the United States. But they go on to say that this will affect whether students go into engineering and what is the other field? I'm sorry, geology. I always forget a word. At least in one interview, I forget at least one word. Anyway, whether they go and do engineering and geology, because if they see dad and uncle and mom their neighbor get laid off, and they read the stories, and they're around the kitchen table also, and dad's saying, yeah, they just hired, 2,000 new people in India, but I'm gone. And now I'm going to go and look at work in the same industry, or do I have to go get a job at the car wash? I don't know. But anyway, so they hear that. And then they are deciding what they're going to go into when they graduate and go on to university. And dad says what to them? Don't do it, honey. Don't do it.
Yeah, anything but that. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy then, the shortage, because of the artificial glut in the market of these workers.
Of these foreign workers, because you can't, if I am hiring somebody for a job and I have 3 possible applicants, or even just 1, or if they're all got job interviews elsewhere and I'm having to compete with them, I'm going to hire an American and I'm going to pay them more. If suddenly 50 foreigners come in, well, maybe Elizabeth's not going to do it, but most big companies are going to say, I can hire 10 employees or 5 employees or 4 for the budget that I was going to have for whatever I was hiring before. I mean, that's just common sense.
Mm-hmm. And there's another route that some of these overseas workers take to become embedded in our labor market, and that is by starting with a student visa. They come, often they get their undergraduate degree in their home country. Then they come to the United States to enroll in a graduate school program, which may or may not be a rigorous program. There's a lot of sort of strip mall graduate school programs that they can enroll in, because there is another program that has been on the books for some time, it was never passed by Congress, but created by executive action, called the Optional Practical Training Program. And under the Obama administration, they expanded it to allow foreign STEM graduates of a degree program in the United States to stay as long as 3 years and work for a company under the guise of training.
Pause right there. I just, this optional practical training, OPT, is at least as bad as H-1B, if not worse in some ways. I read your article on OPT before all the illegal immigration started, so you were focusing more on that. And this is where I actually was going to stay focused primarily. But before we go to this article, which I just pulled up, I want to ask you this. Are you sure, can you say emphatically that if we did not have any, maybe 5 people came in because they were geniuses? I mean, I'm being literal. How many geniuses are in India right now? How many geniuses are in China? I mean, how many Elon Musk and Albert Einsteins are living in India right now and want to come to America? I don't know, but it can't be 200,000 or 1 million or 2 million geniuses. And so if we stopped H-1B overnight and OPT, and everybody that was midway even either went home or when they finished off, they went home and didn't overstay that visa, which is actually what's happening. Would we fail as a country? Would we not be able to take on China because we would lose all competitiveness because companies could not fill the jobs with qualified Americans?
Absolutely not. That's a myth. First of all, we have many, many talented Americans, but also we have a green card program that allows something like 20,000 people to self-petition on the basis of being exceptionally talented and accomplished in their fields.
Is that the O1?
It's the EB1.
EB1.
And 2.
Sure.
And it also allows companies to sponsor the, very accomplished individuals directly for a green card, not having to even go through a temporary work period.
Is that abused?
I think there may be some inflation sometimes of accomplishments, but it's a lot more rigorous than some of the other programs.
H-1B and OPT.
Yes. And so they, those applications are well examined, and it's very competitive and it's numerically limited, But still, we're bringing in 20,000 people a year in those
20,000 geniuses we're bringing in a year. 20,000 geniuses. Albert Einsteins are coming out of our ears. And so do we really need H-1B? Because what I guess the point that you're making is that we have enough workers. I still want a study. I want a study on this. 20-page white paper, 50 pages to go through, because I just want to be able to quote, rather than saying, yes, we have so many qualified Americans, but we have 4 million minimum graduates out of high school every year that are going into college. So that's 4 million every year that can be matriculating right into the workforce. And so it doesn't even seem to make sense that we need all of these. And I focus on India. If I say India, China every time, there's not as many Chinese. The big push is in India. So I'm saying India, but it also includes China. So I don't see how we could possibly need that many, but is there no definitive study? Why would the Department of Labor be doing a study on this, Jessica, so that we really know what we should know?
Because policymakers just believe what the employers tell them about the need for more workers. And if you're sort of a low information member of Congress, and you have employers coming into your office, lobbying, taking you out to dinner, whatever, saying, I, Elon Musk, cannot run my great companies without getting more talented people here. If you don't give me more access to visa workers, then I'm going to move my plants to Canada. And we hear these threats all the time from the Microsoft.
Really?
Yeah. That they specialize in and sink a lot of money into creating this narrative that, number one, Americans can't do this work. Number two, we need more and more. And that the people who are coming in these visa programs are the best and the brightest, the most highly skilled people available on the planet, even though their wages don't reflect that, their job titles don't reflect that. And the fact that these employers are actually firing Americans who were doing these jobs.
So those Americans are always there. The 8,000 engineers. By the way, we're going to start hearing at some point that we need more engineers. So we need to bring in Indians and Chinese and wherever else from, because we need more engineers. But the fact that, because this has already happened in tech, they lay off 20,000 in tech, 15, 5,000, whatever, and we still hear the drumbeat. We don't have tech workers.
It's almost like it's just like a cliche at this point. But the Labor Department numbers don't reflect what they're saying. The studies that, the profiles of the workers coming in don't reflect what they're saying. And people's experience does not reflect these myths that they are peddling. And yet, members of Congress really buy into this. And it's something we do need to worry about now, because we have Elon Musk, who has the ear of the president, who keeps telling him, we've got to get more of these high-skilled workers in here so we can have global talent. Well, we get a lot of global talent. We should want the best global talent to have access to come and work here and allow our best employers to bring them in. But you're right. These people are, these employers who truly want the best talent don't need thousands and thousands of them at a time. They might want 10 or 20 of them at a time. And all those employers are shut out of the H-1B market by these Indian staffing companies who are bringing in just...
Why do we allow... Shouldn't that be against the law? Should we not just say, no, Indian staffing... I don't care where they're from. No foreign staffing companies. It's all Indian, by the way. All the staffing companies are Indian. Yeah. Why is that allowed? And by the way...
Well, I don't think it should be, but we'd have to change the law. to not allow it. Maybe it can be done through regulation. We might see that happen. One thing that Trump tried to do is because their view is that we should have a guest worker program for skilled workers. And I agree with that. An employer should be able to bring in, a few really talented people. But it's, as I said, it's really hijacked by these staffing companies. So what Trump did in his first administration was said, okay, there's a limited number of these visas every year. Instead of having a lottery so that, the people who get these visas are chosen randomly and the staffing companies can dominate that because they, stuff the ballots or to use a different analogy, or they put in so many applications, they know that they're going to get a certain number. What Trump did was say, you know what, we're going to give these out in the order of the highest salaries that are being offered first.
And that failed. He left office, and then that was...
it was scrapped by the administration.
I think during the Trump administration...
You want these people? Highest bidder. That's the way to get the most talent. If you use salary as a proxy for talent, I think that's
because we know the Department of Labor is not a good actor here. Their lower standard of prevailing wage that's used, it's phony, is it not?
It is. It's manipulated. The companies, anyone seeking to sponsor a guest worker does not have to actually show that they could not find American work. What they have to do is attest that the salary that they're going to pay is not going to adversely affect American workers. In other words, they have to pay what's called the prevailing wage. Well, these are easily manipulated by companies kind of artificially. Again, they'll say, well, this person's a trainee, so they should get to pay this get to earn this lower wage, where they're an entry-level worker. There are all kinds of ways they manipulate it. But that's another thing that the Trump administration did, was that they set the prevailing wages much higher.
And then people in his administration did not implement it. It sat there. He didn't even know. I read that story. And then when Biden came in, it was scrapped anyway. But the Trump administration, his people did not implement his executive order that he instituted. So that was...
there was a lot of tension within the White House over this issue between the ones wanting more and more guest workers and people saying, what about American work?
Well, are the Indian schools... I've heard of extraordinary amounts of fraud on the Indian side, the actual applicant and beneficiary side. Credentials that are just bought, credentials that are purchased. Maybe they went to school, but didn't graduate from, a prestigious university, or they actually have credential farms, or you called some of those strip mall graduates. How is that? How do we have a criteria? And I think that what you're saying is that because there's so much fraud on that end and in all these different areas, the only way to do it is say, well, the minimum is $150,000 a year job. And then
That's a way to do it without changing the law. That is something that the president can do. And I think is a reasonable way to do it. I think we should stick with the numerical limitations. There have been requirements that employers who have a certain percentage of their workforce who are guest workers should go through a more rigorous screening process. I think that can be tightened up. I think there need to be site visits to check out the employers. I think the staffing companies ought to be kicked out of the whole process. We simply should not allow staffing companies to sponsor guest workers, especially when they're foreign owned. It just,
because if they're applying for 10,000 H-1Bs, we all know that they're not applying for 10,000 specified. This is supposed to be a specialty occupation and a person particularly qualified for it. They're not hiring 10,000 H-1B workers that they've all interviewed, that they have jobs waiting for them. They're just trying to get a bulk of them assigned or awarded to them. And then it's just...
and then they bring them in and shop them around to clients as exchangeable ordinary workers.
Right. And then exactly, all they're getting is ordinary workers. I have heard so many tech people say that the Indians that they work with, I hate this disclosure thing. I'm talking about India. When I talk about China, if I start talking about Chinese, this and that, and the Chinese spies, Chinese this, no one's going to say it's racist. I don't know why. When I'm talking about India, it's because 75% or 90% of the problem is with India. And so my point is, this is not about race. Don't go there with me.
It's about a business model.
It's a business model.
Yeah. That disadvantages Americans.
Exactly.
It's discriminatory, honestly. And I'm, I hope there will be some, because some of the staffing companies flagrantly discriminate against Americans when they're advertising jobs.
I've seen it on LinkedIn.
H-1B only,
green card only, H-1B only. Yeah. That means you're from India or China. So the Department of Labor, I see that as a problem, child. I really do. And I'm wondering, do you know the current head of the Department of Labor and if there are reforms? And I'll give you a little inside intel here that our reporter discovered. Well, you mentioned that the Department of Labor is actually hiring H-1B visa. Now, why anybody would be in our government be hiring any foreign workers is absolutely beyond me, because it's not just communist China that it does espionage. I mean, across the board, countries do espionage and are spies. And beside the fact, taxpayer dollars should not go toward paying for foreign workers when Americans could be doing the job. But
this is the Department of Labor.
Right, that's the biggest slap in the face. How ironic. It's not ironic, it's just very, very dark humor. She discovered that as soon as the Trump administration or President Trump took office and the Department of Labor was now under his administration, the Department of Labor started scaling back the visibility of particular data on, what they are doing is hiding now. They're doing two things. One, if someone is challenges discriminatory practices or unlawful practices, fraudulent, by a company that's put in for some kind of a visa, and that they're not really for a perm, for a green card, they're not. They're really just trying to get foreigners in the job, and they're not going out to find out first if there's an American that will take the job. When she discovers that, and she puts in a complaint with the Department of Justice, what she's finding out now is that you can't even research it anymore, because they are literally allowing the company, once there's a complaint, the company says, well, can we back out of that particular job? And so there's no record anymore, and the job disappears. And then later on, they can start the hiring process again for more foreign labor. She discovered that, but also in the database, they now eliminated a key piece of information that stymies the work that she's done researching these companies and discovering their unlawful behavior. She's applied to 7,000 jobs. 7,000, never gotten one of them.
Never got an interview,
and
I'm sure.
She's highly skilled tech person. She's never even gotten interviews for them. So she did that, obviously, as an exercise. She's doing it. Mm-hmm. So the Department of Labor, I think, is compromised.
If you did that on housing or something like that, another area where there's discrimination or lending, there would be an investigation for sure.
After the fifth application, there would be. She's done 7,000. I said, okay, Amanda Louise, I know you said 7,000. We all use hyperbole. How many is it? No, it's really 7,000. Okay, this is a dedicated person, and we're going to win this fight through work like hers. So tell me, what is your opinion of the new person in Department of Labor? Because I don't know anything about it.
Well, I have to say, I really don't know much about her either. And that's what worries me, is that she does not have a record of activity looking out for American workers who are disadvantaged by these huge visa programs that her department is charged with overseeing. So I have to say, I'm willing to give anyone a chance, but it's, we are concerned that this is not going to be a priority. And that is double concern when you think about some of the voices in the White House who are pushing for, like Elon Musk and probably others, like Secretary of Commerce Lutnick seems to be a big proponent of guest workers.
Yeah, I'm worried about Lutnick too, and I want to like everybody. I mean, I want us to all be on the same team, and I'm concerned about Lutnick, and I don't know anything about the person at USCIS, and I'm asking you because, I'm trying to do research on these people, and I'm just getting nothing, and I'm kind of worried that if they're hiring H-1B at Department of Labor, that tells me that they are inclined toward foreign labor, because there is no job done at the Department of Labor that an American can't do. So why are they doing that? And does that mean they're hiring immigrants, green card holders in the Department of Labor, USCIS, and elsewhere that are going to be highly inclined numerically, so proportionally so, to loosening and being lax and not overseeing the process to weed out the bad apples?
There are a couple. It's one thing we know for sure is it's not going to get as bad as the Biden administration, where they had someone working at USCIS who is a Palestinian sympathizer who is making decisions on asylum applications. I don't know if you recall that case.
I just barely recall that now. I blocked it out.
So, President's nominee to head USCIS is a man named Joe Edla, and he is an excellent nominee.
Oh, really?
He led the agency at the end of the first Trump administration. He has worked in the immigration agencies. He knows these programs inside and out. He knows the problems. He's already, been involved in trying to reform them in a very constructive way. So I'm.
Have you met him?
Yes, I've known him for years.
Okay, I want to interview this guy. He won't want to do it. I mean, I really want to interview.
After he's confirmed.
Exactly. And if you get any intel on the Department of Labor, we're trying to get an interview for myself. Most of my interviews are pretty friendly, because I want to get the information out from Center for Immigration Studies. But I do want to start asking. I would love to talk to Howard Lutnick. Come on, Howard, tell me why the economy is better when we're flooding it with immigrants that will work for less, and why we're offshoring. That really, really bothers me.
And there are other strong voices in the White House. We have Tom Homan is there, Stephen Miller, and others who are looking out for the interests of American workers and for the country. But the question is, the president himself has been a little bit ambivalent about this issue of foreign workers and seems to say, we want great people, obviously. But the question is how, the issue is fundamentally one with the H-1B program, that these are not great workers who are coming in, benefiting the country.
How can we prove that?
Who are leading, you are displacing great American workers.
Right. How can we? I mean, they come in as a disadvantage anyway. And in other words, to an employer, that diversity does not make anything great because it's diverse, right? Unity of mind and understanding of a project and how one works, the culture of a company, all of that. So bringing in somebody to do tech when it has nothing to do with, say, bringing something from Indian culture that will give them a leg up. But actually, Americans have a leg up because this is their culture. They're working in an American company. They understand because they've been part of it their entire lives. And so they should actually be a better worker, just that much better because it's their culture. But somehow the Indians are getting the jobs because it's all about money. And I just feel as if they're...
And it was also all about ties, ethnic ties that take over in some of these programs for hire, with the staffing companies also get people placed into hiring positions at some of these big companies that use their workers, and they tend to give preferences to their fellow Indian workers.
That is a story. That is... Yes. Imagine, there's also one called, I noticed India, Modi and others are using this term. We very much believe in mobility. And I thought, okay, that's a code word. That is definitely code word. What does it mean? It means that
That's a trade code word.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's migration into America, because what India does not have, it does not have a great environment. It doesn't have a great education system. It doesn't have a great agricultural industry. I mean, it doesn't produce a lot of new industries. It is people. That is their product that they are kind of selling on the open market. And you know what? They have 145 billion people. We cannot sustain that by bringing in millions of their people. Just because they got a lot of them doesn't mean that they should overwhelm American workers.
Well, and we do bring in a lot of immigrants from India through other legal immigration programs. It's not like we need more diversity through this guest worker program. In fact,
we don't have to import diversity. We have Black people, we have Hispanic people, we have Asian. We don't need to import diversity. That's the DEI that that Amanda has said, that when she traces DEI back, she finds some of the earliest roots in India, which I think is very interesting. She's uncovering things that will blow your mind. If DEI came from India as it to diversify our labor force, instead of training Black Americans, imagine what that would do. Tell me what you think would happen if, instead of solving our education and inner city problem by bringing people in, new workers in, and shunting these off to the side, what if we actually engaged them and gave them the kind of opportunities we're giving the foreigners that come in, like training?
Well, it is true. There is a professor named Donna Nelson at the University of Oklahoma who's done a lot of research on opportunities for women in STEM fields, particularly engineering, and has found that women and other American minority groups, especially Native Americans and Blacks, are very severely underrepresented in tech academic programs, and therefore in tech employment as well. And she actually is brave enough to say that her research shows that this is partly because of this flooding into these programs by people who, come into academic programs that are geared at getting employment placement in the U.S. and taking advantage of OPT. And the H-1B program in particular. So
what is your last name?
Nelson.
Don't we need a database? In my research, I would find that no one could give me a number of how many visa holders are in the United States today. That's just the overall number. There is no way. And to me, I don't know.
We don't count it.
Yeah. Isn't that
the
weird?
Government, there are people who have made estimates, but the government does not count it.
Why when we have the government intruding into the most private affairs and private financial affairs, and everything that we do, this pen is probably highly regulated by the government. These flowers were probably, I don't know what. But anyway, they get involved in everything. But they don't want to keep track of some of the most important issues that affect everyday real Americans in everyday real ways and to their detriment. Why would we not want an identification number to be and a biometric card to be handed out? I mean, this, you go and you join Costco and they take a picture, slap it on a card, and you go off shopping, right? Why wouldn't we have that for all visa holders that come into the United States? If you come in for 90 days, why would you have some kind of identification? And how would that affect?
They do. They do have very sophisticated biometric identification through their visa, especially, and also through the work permits that are issued sometimes. But they're not tracking the exits. The issue is that no one has deemed it sufficiently important to count. They could count it, but no one has said to the Office of Immigration Statistics, which is within the Department of Homeland Security, how many people are in this country as temporary workers on H-1B. We count the number who enter each year, but they go back and forth. They come in and out. We count the number of visas that are issued, but nobody seems to want to put out the number who are all here who have never left.
How do you why do you think they don't want that, is specifically that number to be put out?
It could be different reasons. I think one reason is that it just these programs are kind of on autopilot, or there is an assumption in some government offices that this is a great program and it's not something that we need to keep track of. But mainly it's because nobody has told them to. And it,
really
made it a priority to get this information out.
Well, to me, when I hear that, I mean, we know there's so many million illegal aliens here, but when I found out that 750,000 to 1 million Indians are here illegally, that really popped out to me, because we're really supposed to look at the illegal immigrants as mostly from south of the border, right? We have that in our brain most of the time. But it occurred to me that I know tens of thousands of Indians have come over the border in the South in the last 4 years. However, I would think that most of these illegals are here on, could be travel, but mostly H-1B or OPT, F1, etc. Why are we not tracking the exits of visa holders from the United States?
Well,
requiring them to file when they exit. Like there's a verifiable filing when they exit.
That actually is tracked through a system called the Arrival Departure Information System. And there is something published on that every year. And we know that in the student visa and the work visa categories, that a lot of the overstays are citizens of India, also China, the Philippines, and a few other countries. So that is checked. But enforcing immigration law, as we know, for the last 4 years was not a priority. It's something that the first Trump administration never really got to, because they were dealing with a lot of other issues as far as, making visa overstayers leave. And then COVID hit and, but that doesn't mean it can't be done now. We do track that. The government knows.
It's interesting because when I was doing the research, and I'm going to believe you, they said that literally because of all the many ports of exit, and a lot of people might go down to Mexico, go to Canada, and leave in various different ways that are not tracked. Like if they drive south of the border and then leave and go back to wherever they're from, that it's not tracked. So I'm wrong on that information. I was told it was not.
It used to be. Now we do track when someone goes to Canada. We share information, entry-exit information. So an exit to Canada.
So the information's available. So the information is there, because I was under the understanding that the information wasn't available, and that really gets me, because that should be available. So you're saying they're just not giving it to us. But the reality is, on your story on OPT, and this is before the huge wave of immigration from the Biden administration, it was actually October 23rd, 2020, you did a story on the Homeland Security and ICE officials at a press conference, and they had they announced this Operation Optical Illusion, and what they were doing was dealing with the fraud in OPT, because that is rife with fraud. But the interesting thing is, besides informing us that there are 200,000 foreign students that are on OPT work permits, that was 4 or 5 years ago.
It's 300,000 some now.
And you said here in this article that ICE has not released information on the colleges that the offenders attended or on the alleged employers. And inexplicably, though, ICE seems to be letting some of the bogus employees off the hook. So what you were saying here, I won't read the whole thing, is here we have colleges working in collusion with students, maybe with companies, maybe with staffing companies, to give false optional practical training certificates or permissions to foreign students, and they're working for yeah. So these students, I know you don't have time now to go into OPT. I would like to do a deep dive on this OPT story. That was really why I never end up interviewing somebody for what I intend to. It's my method. But anyway, because OPT is one of the most heinous, egregious public policies I've ever seen in my entire life, and what it has done to Americans, workers, students, everything. But what I see is that ICE was letting go the employees that working at the universities, not holding the employers to account, and they didn't even deport the foreigners that were knowingly taking fake jobs, because there was no company, no job. And they didn't even penalize them. Like, in other words, they should be barred for life from ever entering the United States again. So don't you think that's the reason we don't have that information provided by ICE or USCIS regarding how many visas are active in the United States today?
Well, that really could be counted by Customs and Border Protection is responsible for counting the comings and goings of people when they cross the border in or out. Whereas ICE is responsible for administering the OPT program, this is part of the problem, is that there are all these different parts of the Department of Homeland Security. They have different jurisdictions, different priorities, don't always work together well. But I expect to see some very constructive changes to the OPT program coming soon. Because
there's legislation.
Not legislation so much as regulation, because after all, it was created out of thin air anyway. So
Obama,
there is no an OPT.
And so it can be, with the stroke of the pen, ended even overnight.
Literally.
And America would survive?
Oh, yes, I think so. Definitely. We'd have to, really clutch our pearls a lot, and there would be, hair shredding in academia and among certain employers and advocates for foreign students, but we definitely would survive.
We would. Last question, something that's keeping me up. I've got so many questions, and I'm not going to get to them. I will ask this one. Do you have any inside understanding of the chipmaker visa that some idiot has proposed in the past? And the reason it concerns me so much is this. We're already bringing foreigners in to take our graduating students' jobs, our professionals' jobs. We're offshoring them. But President Trump has been dedicated to reshoring manufacturing. Great.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're offshoring our technical jobs and that entire industry and destroying the workers here in the United States. But now he's got this commitment, and I don't remember the name of the Taiwanese, biggest Taiwanese company that makes chips. And they have offices here and facilities in Colorado or Arizona. I can't remember. He made that big speech. And I was watching the speech and the nice Taiwanese gentleman, and I had this one question that nobody ever asked. Are we going to hire in this newly reshored or this shored manufacturing 100% Americans? I mean, or are we bringing Taiwanese and Indians? We reshore chip making. Great, bravo. Billions of dollars of investment. This is going to be great for our economy. We build this stuff out, and then we go and hire foreigners or bring them in on H-1B and OPT and all the rest. Is that a possibility? Have you seen anything out there verifying that the chip makers' jobs are going to go to Americans?
No, I haven't seen any guarantees for that whatsoever, and I would be surprised if there were. We've seen deals like this before, usually made by states to try to attract a company, to set up a plant I saw this not too long ago in Connecticut, where it was a big deal. The governor of Connecticut said, "Oh, this is so wonderful, jobs for nutmeg state residents." And it turned out that they were actually using a lot of guest workers because there was no requirement that they hire locals to do these jobs. So I think we need to be concerned about initiatives like this that sound good and seem to fit the trade narrative, but sometimes these are like a Trojan horse for expansion of guest worker programs, because the advocates for these companies sometimes are also advocating for these guest worker programs. So they need to be examined very carefully for how they're going to benefit.
Problem is we don't have a very, when I say sexy, I mean like a charismatic person. Steve Miller, I think, would be brilliant, but he's got a very important job, and I don't think he can become the advocate for reform of these immigration policies, especially because there's I don't know if it's dissension, but there's very, very clearly divergent views on this. But we don't have anybody out there going from department to department exposing all of the corruption and the fraud that is in these derelict, horrible visa programs. And so I just don't see that happening. I don't see anybody up at the top being able to get visible enough to be able to start a national conversation. I mean, you and I are working hard on it, but we're not Elon Musk. We're not, just the big tech bros. We don't know billion-dollar companies.
No, WorldNetDaily is doing a lot of good reporting on this. I see a lot more public awareness of the pitfalls with these programs now than there used to be 10 years ago.
So we got to keep it up.
A lot more people working on this. So we just have to get the word out there. And also another strong voice within the White House is Vice President Vance. Oh. And he is very well informed on these issues.
Can you get me an interview with J.D. Vance? Because I'm telling you, I will treat him like a king. And I want it for 3 hours. If Joe Rogan got him for 3 hours, I want 3 hours. I would have a list this long for him, because I really want to know. He hints at such deep understanding. And then he goes off to India, and I'm thinking, can I please know When India comes here, when Modi comes here, and when we go there, one of our guys go there, you know what I don't ever see? I don't ever see the proof. What exactly? I know you guys signed a great deal. You're working things out. Isn't this wonderful? But all I know is now we're going to be manufacturing, our fighter jets in India. I'm not getting a good feel from that kind of a report, but I don't see the details. Do you know what deals the White House has made with Modi?
No, but we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention.
I want to stop
India,
it before they announce it.
Countries in the world. I don't know why we feel like we have to give all this away for this, so-called free trade.
My phrase is India is China 2.0. And if we 40 years ago had stopped what we were doing then, this onslaught of immigration. I hate this phrase, so I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say this terrible phrase, in immigration pornography or orgies. It's just like insanity. It's that bad. We would not have offshored 100,000 manufacturing, factories and millions upon millions of jobs and trillions of dollars of money, and now have to have a president that's reshoring it. If we had realized, and so many people did, and sounded the alarm, and Congress went ahead, and the president's with it anyway. But if that had not happened, we would not be where we are today in this deficit with China and all of the cataclysmic events that have occurred, or the status we have now because of treating China the way we did, and therefore hyper offshoring to China. Now what we're doing is doing the exact same thing with India, but instead of moving factories, we're just moving office buildings and filling it up with Indians in India. And then we're taking Americans, emptying office buildings of Americans and filling them up with Indians and Chinese here. What's going to happen? We'll close with this. If we continue with India, because India is the big player, if we continue with India, what we're doing right now, and have been for at least 10 years with them, where will we be in the tech industry and in the middle class America? What will our economic situation be, and where will we be as far as the global, like being the top global power in tech?